All right, let's shift gears this Monday afternoon. Newly crowned Miss South Africa, Mia Le Roux's victory is more than just a title, it also represents inclusivity. In a first for South Africa, the 28-year-old made history as the first hearing-impaired woman to be crowned the most beautiful woman in the land. Let's speak now to Andiswa Gebashe, who's the founder of Andi Signs. Jabaa, Mohamed and Beryl Botha are both sign language interpreters. To all of our guests, thanks very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. It's great to see all of you. Andiswa, what an incredible moment for inclusivity, as so many people have said since the announcement of Miss South Africa.
I know. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's wonderful to talk to all of you. Jabaa, do you want to weigh in on, and Jabaa, for the sake of our viewers, is on the left-hand side of your screen. Do you want to weigh in on what a title like Miss South Africa means for the hearing-impaired community?
Wow, thank you very much, Michelle, for the opportunity to be interviewed. I will be using South African Sign Language and the interpreter is voicing over for me. So just to clarify, I'm a man, she's a woman. For South Africa, for the deaf community within South Africa, it's quite an awe-inspiring moment. Very much a lot of goosebumps and quite in awe. Really, the world is now opening up to the South African deaf community. So everything, the doors are opening and it's starting local. And we do feel as that this is quite an amazing time for South Africa, not just for South African people, but for the world on the international stage as well. So very awe-inspiring moment, and I'm very happy that she has taken the title.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Andiswa, we often talk about the importance of representation, right? For young women and girls, for young boys and men to see themselves, whether it's on TV, whether it's in books, whether it's on store shelves. This is yet another opportunity for me, if I'm a member of the deaf community, to see myself and to know what's possible.
Most definitely. You took the words straight out of my mouth. But I think more than just to see it from a deaf community, I think it's a great achievement for all of us as a country. At Andi Signs, we're a believer that if there's one language that's going to unify us, it is South African Sign Language. Because you don't, it's not based on any spoken language, it's a language on its own. And everybody can understand it. And I think what was also extra special was the production and Miss South Africa having sign language interpretation for the first time, making the competition accessible in my home language. That was a big history in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you see this, Beryl, if I want to bring you into the conversation now as well? Where do you see this in terms of how it might open up even more doors? I mean, it's difficult now in 2024 to still be talking about opening doors, but we are still trying to address issues of inclusivity across various spectrums, aren't we?
I'm going to answer for her because she's interpreting. So if she's interpreting, she can't then take off her hand. But I think it means, as a sign language user, if I open my channel, and it doesn't necessarily have to be me, that in the entertainment space as well, that I can see my language being represented. And more than anything, I can have access to information, which is what we all want. And it's all our linguistical rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jabaa?
Can I just add?
Yes, please, go ahead.
And just to add to that, on Saturday, for me, it was also quite inspiring to see a South African Sign Language interpreter on Miss South Africa. In the history of the 66 years that this pageant has been taking place, there's never been a sign language interpreter. And also for our deaf communities at large that are watching, that were watching, they now feel that we have that full accessibility. And they felt quite in awe because South Africa is listening to our needs and listening to our concerns, whoever the organizations are that reach out to us as the deaf community. So very, very wow moment to have sign language interpreters accessibility and also making us feel equal, because it's not because we are deaf and you need to pity us. We don't see it as from that perspective. We have a right to equality as well because we are human beings and we are South Africans. We also have our ID numbers and our driver's licenses, so you just treat us as equal.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about 66 years, was it, of Miss South Africa, and we haven't had a sign language interpreter. Yes, this is a victory that it has finally happened, but it's also an indictment, right? Not only on the pageant, but for so many other aspects of society.
No, most definitely. And I think it's time we move away from when we see a sign language interpreter, it's on a disability program. And be able to separate the two, that there is the disability, the deafness. However, South African Sign Language is a language which now has the official status, which should be elevated at the same level as English, as isiZulu, as Tshivenda, or any other official language in South Africa. We're celebrating 1 year of the language being made an official language, and one wish we would move over we still need to do this and implement it in schools so that our kids can choose whether they want to do South African Sign Language and isiZulu, and have that option. And it's going to take all of us. Hence, I was saying earlier that it's a victory for the deaf community as a whole and sign language users, but it's a victory for the country, for something that is going to unify us.
Yeah, and stop the othering, right? Particularly of the deaf and hearing impaired community.
Yes.
And Jabaa, if I can ask you this question, what I did earlier when I was asking Beryl a question, knowing full well that she's also signing, it says a lot about how there is this lack of understanding, right? I expected Beryl to answer and sign.
Yes. So as you can see now, as Andiswa also explained earlier, the interpreter cannot change roles or change hats while she's interpreting. They do have a code of ethics. So while they are interpreting, they are in that role and in that field. I can't, for example, I can't be a doctor and a model at the same time. Perfect example. So while I'm in my doctor's role, I'm focusing on my patients. And if people ask me about my modeling side, I can't focus on that. So same with a simple sign language interpreter. They are conveying the information, processing that, and putting it in the output language that is required. And many people think, it's such easy work for interpreters to do that. And it's not. It's not. That process of interpreting, and because of South African Sign Language, it has its own structure and its own dialects and own grammar. It's a very complex process. It also depends on the context as well. So as interpreters, when they are in that process of, for you guys, interpreters have to go into English structure. We don't use sign language to say, we don't use the boys going to the shop. We don't sign it in that grammar. We sign the boy shop go. That's the structure in sign language. So interpreters will need to follow that process in terms of going in from the sign language structure into the English structure, whatever the output language that is required. So just to answer your context in terms of the interpreter. Then for the interpreter, for them they're just doing their job as their role and providing accessibility in whatever job. Also, they can't drop out any information or prefer to say specific things if they don't feel like saying it. They're not there to assist the deaf person. They're just there to interpret. So definitely adding on to what Andiswa has already explained.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, I was sort of expecting you to, for me, it would be like speaking English and then at the very same time speaking Afrikaans and doing that kind of translation in real time, right? It's like a ridiculous request.
Yes, it's like saying finishing klaar. Yes. What's the correct grammar?
Yeah, absolutely. What a wonderful discussion. And it's such a pleasure talking to you guys. Just in terms of breaking down the barriers, and it's all about educating yourself, right? If you're not a member of the deaf and hearing impaired community, and this can be said for so many other communities in the country that face marginalization, it's all about educating yourself, trying to do better. And I'm talking about individuals here, talking about pageants like Miss South Africa, companies, broadcasters, and the list goes on and on.
No, most definitely. It goes even on the terminology, because in a medical space, it's acceptable to say hearing impairment. And in the cultural space, it's okay to say deaf. And there are people who recognize themselves with a small d because it's just a medical impediment. And for some, like my father, who uses the capital D when he describes himself because he embodies the culture of deafness, And it goes to, when you speak of awareness, we just need to continue at it, because including the size of a box. When you are listening to a radio or this show, for example, and the volume is on 2, you almost want to come closer so that you can hear proper. It's the same with the size of the box. That's the volume. So the bigger, the louder and the clearer, because the grammar of the language is on the face. The smaller, the volume is small. And then my poor dad, who's in his 70s, has to come closer to the screen so that he can hear. So it just needs all of us, awareness, because it is something new. Yeah. We just need to walk ourselves into this inclusion of SASL.
Jabaa, I see you knocking on imaginary wood there. Do you want to add your thoughts?
Yes. Also adding on to what Andiswa mentioned, many people think that we are awarding Mia's victory because she's deaf or because she's hard of hearing. We are not looking at it from the medical perspective. We are looking at it from a social model perspective. She's very, very beautiful, yes, but she is going to represent us ultimately. So when she walked on that stage with that confidence, it showed that she's not concerned about the way that she speaks. She's not thinking about what people might think. She was proud to show who she was and who she is. And I've seen a lot of comments on Instagram, on Facebook, on social media. People are saying that she won because she's deaf, and that's not the reason. And the time is now for people to be aware and open-minded to the fact that it was an equal process. We've been marginalized for many years. And now is the time that we are seen as equal. We can also be a part of society in a sense that we can do things that everybody else can do. And of not having that thinking of, do you need help? Do you need this? Be flexible with us. A lot of people think also that even in the performance world, thinking that people can pretend to be actors, where you can have deaf actors. And right now, I think we do have more accessibility coming in terms of the health services sector, in the court sector, many more coming. And so with Mia and her title and her victory, it will open up many more doors. People will be more open to sponsoring companies in terms of providing better access, better ways of approaching deaf people. It doesn't mean that you can't sign. We respect that. Obviously, we respect everyone's individuality in terms of how you grew up and your background. And she's individual as well. Every individual has their own needs and accommodations. So, for example, subtitles, I think she needs that. But at the end of the day, she's representing the South African deaf community and representing South Africa as a whole. And her impact will not only impact us, but will impact the entire country. And hopefully, going forward, we'll see interpreters on the world stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine a child sitting there watching and seeing themselves and hearing her speak, and seeing representation of who they are and what that means to them. And when you talk about being a part of society, we mean being a part of all sectors of society, right? Not just sectors where it is the most convenient. And perhaps, Beryl, you can give us the last answer there.
I'm really like help. I'm unable to answer.
No, I thought that Jabaa might sign for her. No, Andiswa, you'd sign for her.
It's something that she can indicate if she wishes to do by nodding, and then I don't see a nod. So, but just to add on what Jabaa was saying, We are seeing sign language on Netflix, which is beautiful. Inamba has a deaf South African actor, which is the first in the history of Netflix in our continent. There's the Lobola man just now. There isn't a deaf actor, but how they incorporated sign language in a comic way. That's just to show that there's so many things that we can do to incorporate the language and celebrate the language, and not only see it when it's serious things, but just like in fun way, in comedy, in music, everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andiswa, Jabaa, Beryl, as you can see, I still have a lot to learn. I will do the work and I encourage others to do the same. It's been wonderful talking to you, and it's so great to have your perspective on the new Miss South Africa, Mia Le Roux, and what her victory means for the deaf and hearing impaired community. Wonderful pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.